Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Nandini. I work with the capacity building team at WRI-India, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar. We will be discussing today how children travel in a city, the issues that they face while commuting, and how we can enable safer commutes for children by collecting child-specific data, re-engineering roads, and reducing crash risks around schools. We'll be doing all of this by taking a closer look at what's happening in Rohtak, Haryana. Let me introduce you to our expert speakers for today. We will begin with a short presentation by Amit Bhatt, who is our Director of Integrated Transport at WRI-India. He will share an overview of the global and national road safety scenario and how it relates with the concept of child-friendly cities. We will then hear from Vaibhav Kush, who will be presenting the Rohtak case. Vaibhav is trained as an architect, and he currently works as a project associate with the transport team at WRI-India, specializing in projects related to road safety and child-friendly cities. The presentation component of this webinar will take about 30 to 40 minutes, and we will reserve 20 minutes at the end for your questions. So please, if you do have questions while these speakers are presenting, feel free to submit those through the questions box, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end and follow up with those who we aren't able to address at the end of the session. With that, I will turn you over to Amit.
Thanks a lot, Nandini. Welcome everyone to this webinar on this very interesting topic of looking at safe commute for school children. I think before we get into the details, I think one is to look at what does a child-friendly city mean. And I think this is something which is pretty interesting to know. So if you look at what does child-friendly city mean? I think what we have seen is that multiple organizations, multiple people have defined the whole issue of child-friendly cities in a different manner. And so, for example, but if you look at the underlying theme, I think the underlying theme is that children are the underlying theme in terms of what constitutes as a child-friendly city. And therefore, in terms of the definition, I think the UNICEF's definition pretty much summarizes what does it mean. And that is that we are looking at a city, town, or an urban area, or a community in which the voices, needs, priority, and the rights of children are an integral part of policies, program, or decisions. So basically, what we are saying is that children have a voice, and the voice is respected in the planning and design of policy making of the area. And that is, I think, fundamental to the definition. In terms of, you look at the broad sense of what kind of constitutes a child-friendly space or a city, we are looking at issues ranging from health and well-being to access to maybe quality education, recreational environment, which is very important, and also the issue of protection from abuse and exploitation. But for us, the fundamental kind of issue in this is safe and secure spaces. I think that safety is a fundamental to anything and everything that has to do with child-friendly space. But if you look at the global scenario of road safety, and is only looking at road traffic injuries and fatalities, we are almost losing 13.5 lakh people or 1.3 million people every year due to road traffic crashes. And this is the 8th leading cause of death for all age groups. World Health Organization has kind of classified it as an epidemic, and cities and countries around the world are working hard to bring down this number. If you look at the child safety data in this, and so we are looking at a number of around 81,000 plus people between the age of 5 and 14 dying every year on account of road traffic crashes. And it is the #1 cause of death for children in the age group of 5 and 14. So a lot of our citizens of tomorrow are kind of killed because of the issue of road traffic crashes, and which is very worrisome. However, if we kind of look at these numbers from the Indian scenario, close to 1.5 lakh people in India lose their lives, and if you look at the official data, India has the highest road traffic deaths around the world, and that number is close to 1.5 lakh. And it is the first kind of cause of accidental death for all ages. And just yesterday, the cabinet approved the motor vehicle bill. Hopefully, when the bill gets passed, we would look at some systematic changes around road safety, but it's a major concern for us. And if you look at the data around children, I think that data has a lot of issues around it. So, for example, when we look at the official data of NCRB, we found that about 15,600 children below the age of 18 have lost their lives on a yearly basis in India. But if we look at some of the data collected by Nissan or Save Life Foundation, that number is almost 40% less, to about 9,400. But even at 15,600 is a number which is debated, because we don't have a very disaggregated data through which we can really analyze this issue in detail. So just to flag this issue, that data is a big kind of concern around this issue of child safety. So we started this work in Haryana, and the reason why we chose Haryana is that, yes, Haryana is comparatively small in terms of geographic spread compared to other states, but if you look at the number of deaths per 1 lakh population, it is number 5 in the list. And therefore, road safety is a major issue in Haryana. And what was also heartening is that the state government actually launched a program to kind of bring down these 5,000 deaths that happen every year, out of which 5% is around vicinity of schools, through the Haryana Vision Zero campaign. And I think this, for the first time in India, looks at a systemic approach, adopts a safe systems approach for road safety. And so we thought we can leverage this great momentum in Haryana and also kind of look at the issue of child road safety. So with this, now I will hand over to my colleague Vaibhav, who's been kind of leading this work, to talk more about this work around Rohtak on safe commute for school children.
Thanks, Amit. Welcome, everyone. And very sorry for the sudden change in the background color. But so we started this project in Rohtak called the Safer Commute for School Children. It has been funded by the Botnar Child Road Safety Botnar Foundation and managed by the Global Road Safety Partnership. So Botnar is a Swiss-based NGO working in the space of child education, child health, and child road safety as well. And Global Road Safety Partnership is an international NGO hosted by the International Red Cross Society, and they are also working on road safety. And we started this project in partnership with the Municipal Corporation of Rohtak, Rohtak Police, and NASCOM Foundation. NASCOM Foundation is basically an association of IT and BPM companies in India. So together we made a proposal that we would like to make this commute of the children safer in Rohtak. So it is a 2-year project starting in May 2018 and ending in April 2020. So Rohtak is basically the district headquarters of the Rohtak district, and it is estimated about 4 lakh people live in the city of about 115 square kilometers. And here again, as Amit mentioned about the problem of data at a national level, we have the same problem at the state and the district level. So if you see in 2016, As per police records, we had 123 crashes that led to about 137 deaths. While the numbers given by the Haryana Vision Zero's road safety associates, who actually go and look into each and every FIR, plus some other sources of data as well, they do crash investigations and all, they came up with a number of 521 road crashes that led to 241 deaths. So again, there is a gap in there is some difference in what the numbers are reported and what the actual number of deaths are. And here I would like to point out that this is deaths related to the general population. We do not have data on how many children are actually dying. So when the project was starting at that time, as I mentioned, we had estimated about 4 lakh population, and 36% of this population was aged below 18 when the project started, and 78,000 students at that time were enrolled in the various schools in the city. So we started this Safer Commute for School Children project with a vision to transform the city where children can travel safely alone, whether they are alone, whether they are accompanied by any adult, whether they are walking or cycling. Once a child is outside his home, he is safe. That was the vision of our project. And we had 2 objectives for the project. One was to reduce crash risk around 5 schools. So in the project, we select 5 schools where we will do specific interventions, and a larger objective of reducing the crash risk for all the children in Rohtak in general. So I'll start with this. Okay, so there are some strategies also within the objectives, how we were trying to accomplish these objectives. So like the first strategy is to reduce crash risk around 5 schools. So we develop partnership with 5 schools. We do the mobility pattern. We study how children are traveling in the city, what are the challenges they are facing, and then we improve the road infrastructure. We provide traffic management solutions to mitigate that risk. So these are the 3 strategies we had devised to reach objective 1. And in objective 2, which was a larger objective of reducing crash risk in the entire city, we thought of capacity building of city officials, they being the providers of infrastructure in a city. So the police and the engineers, their capacity building, and then influencing the community at large, the students, the parents, media persons, everyone other than the city officials, influencing them. So I'll start with the second objective first because that is a larger goal. So the second objective, as I said, was to influence reduction in crash risk across the city. So to realize this, it is important to look beyond the duration of the project and ingrain the idea of safety for children in the people who manage our cities. So we had, like I said, we do workshops for engineers and traffic police. And so far, we have completed 1 year of the project, and we have done 4 workshops till now with 6 departments, that is 5 engineering departments in Rohtak, and 1 is the police basically. And so far, we have had 153 participants in these 4 workshops. And here I would like to point out 2 very interesting workshops that we had. One very recently we completed was a 2-day workshop with the senior leadership of 5 districts of Rohtak range. So basically Solifar, Bhiwani, Rohtak, Jajjar and Charkhi Dadri, 4 districts adjoining Rohtak. So the Inspector General of Police for the entire Rohtak range, plus the SPs and DSPs of these 5 districts. They came together and deliberated on the issue of road safety in general and child road safety. So while the project is Rohtak specific, this was a workshop where we were able to bring together the senior leadership from different districts as well. The second workshop, which was interesting, was a combined workshop we did with the police and the engineering department. So a lot of times we have this conversation with the police department that the infrastructure is provided by the engineering departments, but we are the people who are on the ground managing the traffic. So we know the real situation, we know the problems that are faced by people, but we are not, our knowledge is not taken into consideration when the infrastructure is being made. So we did a combined workshop where we created a platform where both police and engineers can sit together, discuss the issues that people face, and come out with solutions together of how we can address the issue of road safety. So this was one of the activities that we have been doing. The other strategy that included influencing the community as like doing workshop with school children and parents and teachers, then Rahagiri, using Rahagiri platform to uh, do campaigns around child road safety. And a very important part is the media outreach, using social media, print media, to talk about what we are doing, to let the community know that this is an issue and it needs to be addressed. So again, so far we have had 2 workshops with students, with more than 350 students participating in these workshops, and we have collaborated with a foundation called the Roses Foundation. They come with real life situations, they enact situations and tell students how you should act on the road, what are the road etiquettes you should follow when using the roads. Then again, like using Rahagiri and other special occasions like World Remembrance Day, we have UN Road Safety Week. So certain special occasions plus Rahagiri, we try to work with students and the community to communicate this message of road safety. And then the media coverage, writing about our work, and people talking about our work. So that was the larger objective of the project, which looked at influencing a reduction in crash rates for all the school, for all the children in the city. But just hearing and reading about issues cannot bring a change, and that's where we have the first objective, which provides an opportunity to show the people that city can be made safer for children. So not just workshop, but we are trying to, through practical interventions, we are trying to say that whatever we are saying can actually be done. It's not just about talking about it. So the first strategy, which involved developing partnership with schools. So there were a couple of parameters based on which schools were selected. So what type of school is it? Is it a private school? Is it a government school? Because every school will have a different typology of students coming and studying there. What is the total enrollment in the school? Because that will define the total beneficiaries, at least direct beneficiaries we will have for the project. Students below grade 5. So there are a lot of parameters that we had before we chose 5 schools. And also the last 2 were very interesting because the city, there is a railway line passing right through the city. So how close is the school to the railway line? Because these are unmanned, unfenced railway crossings, so anyone can pass through these railway lines. Plus, there were some black spots, some critical spots identified by the police and the Haryana Vision Zero Road Safety Associates. So critical spots were accident-prone areas, basically. So we had all those maps. So how close is your school to an existing black spot? That also uh, factored in. So we selected these 5 schools in the city with a total enrollment. When we started the project, the total enrollment of the school in these 5 schools was about 7,500 students. And so we had a mix of Saini Senior Secondary School, which is a aided school. It's a government aided school. Then we have 2 very big model school and MDN school, which are private schools. So we had a mix of the typology of school and getting students from different socioeconomic backgrounds. So once the schools had been selected, and we have started this project, and as experts we go, like Amit said, that different professions see child friendly cities in a different way, and we as road safety experts went to the city to make the commute safer for children. But what does safety mean to the students or to the children? And so that is what we wanted to understand through this focus group discussions. So the question that was asked, or what we wanted to understand, was what does safety mean to the beneficiaries? And the question was asked from the students and the caretakers, that are the parents and the teachers. And to get a good sense of, get a good sample, we again profiled different schools. So one is a private school with a better of well-off families, then a Saini school, which is a government-aided school. So different types of schools, and within the schools as well, we did some participant profiling, that we should have different age groups responding to the question. We should have a variation in the gender, how they are traveling to school, and children below grade 6, they are usually accompanied by a parent. So parents should be part of the focus group discussion. Teachers should be there. So that's how we profiled that's how the sample was decided for the focus group discussion. And after a certain ice-breaking sessions and getting the consent form signed from the children, we started with the interactive session, like how far do you live from the school, how do you travel to school, what are the challenges that students actually face while traveling in the city. So these were the sort of questions that were asked, and all the responses were then categorized into different categories, like perception. Was it a behavioral response? Was the response related to the lifestyle of people? Was it a infrastructure related problem? And so different responses categorized into different themes, and who actually responded to it, whether a student replied to this question, whether a parent or a teacher replied to it. So we did some analysis, and some key messages that were identified through this focus group discussion was, there is a general fear of traveling on roads. So especially among children, means that a lot of students had responded to this. So it is a general belief that traffic police is responsible for ensuring road safety. Not this might be a perception, but this is what we got from the focus group discussion. Then the vehicle drivers have poor driving skills. They lack road etiquettes. Infrastructure is very poor, and underage driving is prevalent. Although a lot of schools maintain that we do not allow our students to come on 2-wheelers or 4-wheelers, but this did come out from their very own students and their very own parents. So underage driving is prevalent there. So based on this focus group discussion, we moved forward with our project. So the next step was to get into the details of the city, basically to understand the city. We were collecting transport related data, master plan, all these things. And so these are the two activities where we try to assess the city in terms of the general land use, what is the vehicle registration, where are the important landmarks in the city, where are the parks, where do children have to go for social, recreational purposes. So mapping of the city and then using the police FIRs plus the data collected through the Haryana Vision Zero, we tried to map the crash risk in the city. Now, again, here I would like to point out the biggest challenge has been getting child-specific data. As we already mentioned that there is a lot of problem in the general road safety data. A bigger problem is the age is not mentioned in the police FIRs. So even if 521 deaths are happening, we cannot know that how many children are actually part of that 521 deaths. So that was a very big challenge for us. And then a workaround which we thought could help us would be starting this injury reporting form. So we created a form and gave to the schools that they should maintain a registry of incidents. Children can come and tell that they had a certain incident and that can be recorded. Unfortunately, that was not being maintained. So data once again was a very big challenge. Then we got into the very specifics of how children are actually traveling in the city. And this is one of the most important activities in the entire project because we have literally no data on how children actually travel in a city. How do they, where do they travel? For what purposes do they travel? We know they have to go to school, but other than going to school, so this was another key message that we could identify from the focus group discussion was that a lot of students were going directly to tuition classes after their school. So they were having multi-destination trips. So how were they making these multi-destination trips? Someone drops them to the school, but in the afternoon, how do they go to the tuition? There are some students who are going for sports activities after school. So what mode of transport do they use? Do they walk? Do they cycle? There are a lot of shared auto rickshaws in the Rohtak city. Do they use that? There is literally no data on how children are traveling. The best that we are able to get is a very small percentage of students using the school bus. So the schools maintain a record of how many students are coming by the school bus, and that's it. We have no other data about how children are actually traveling on the in the city. So we gave out this map. So like in this example, you would be seeing just one red dot, so that represents one school. So we gave out forms to each and every student of the 5 schools we had, and the students were asked to mark their routes. So red one is like going to school, some other color is going to market, and what is the route they usually take to travel. Then, apart from route mapping, we also did mobility mapping of where children live, where is their home, where does their tuition zones, where are their tuition zones, how do they travel to and from the school. what is their destination after school. While most of the students might be going home, there were certain students, as we had identified in the FGTs, that some students were actually going uh, to some other location. So what is that location that they are going? And of course, underage driving. So we did this survey using show of hands. One of us would just ask the questions, and children, if they wanted to respond, they just raised their identity number. Using identity number was actually one of the prerequisites of this project, that we could not uh, collect personally identifiable data of children. So we were using these placards. And we came out with very interesting analysis through this survey, that 63% of the students that we surveyed were actually living within 2 kilometers of their school. And the average trip length, not just for coming to school, for all trip purposes, the average trip length for this sample was 68% within 2 kilometers. Yet, only about 12 plus 12, 14, 24% of people were actually walking or cycling. Most of the students that we surveyed were either using auto rickshaws or two-wheelers to complete their trips, which were actually less than 2 kilometers. So they could easily walk or cycle to their destination, but they are not walking or cycling. And a very interesting um, thing is that if you see the dark colored motorcycle, that is actually 8% of the students are riding vehicles. That number is of students who are driving vehicles. So 8% of the students that we surveyed, they said that they were actually using a motorized vehicle to come to school. So through the surveys, we also mapped the concentration of home zones. So basically, we had divided the city into different zones, and that too, for each and every school, we had created zones of the neighborhoods within 2 kilometers of that school. So this is an overlay of all the 5 schools survey that we did. And this was a basis for identifying the priority locations that will be taken up in this project for improvements. So with this, okay, and some more interesting facts that we were able to identify from this survey was 45% of students said they drive vehicles, but almost 75% said they at least know how to drive. And a very interesting thing happened. So this survey was done with students above grade 6, so 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So students below grade 5 were not interviewed because a lot of reasons were there. One was that children below grade 5, they were not able to recollect the name of the zones where they lived or the routes that they usually take. So it was the data was getting corrupted, and we decided that we will not do the survey with the students. But we still tried with a class 5, grade 5 students. And even in that grade, we were able to identify certain kids who said that they knew how to drive. So children as young as about 10 or 11 years old, they know how to drive in the city. And again, 76% students travel within 2 kilometers of their school. So it's not just home to school. Their tuitions or their play areas also is within 2 kilometers of where their school is. and just about 21% students use a different mode of travel after school. So so these 20% might be coming from a particular mode of travel in the morning, but it changes in the afternoon. So with this, we completed our second strategy, and the next part, which is the more interesting part of the project, was once we have the issues, how do we rectify it? So based on the surveys that we did, we identified the priority locations that had to be taken up for intervention, and doing detailed survey, doing volume counts and everything on these surveys, and making preliminary designs and everything. So based on the survey, these are the 5 schools that we had selected, and this was the 13-kilometer stretch that we identified to be taken up in this project for improvement, which contains about 11 intersections also. And so we did the detailed survey, as I said, mapping of the existing infrastructure, traffic and pedestrian volume counts. The speed surveys were very important in this project. So these are some of the problems that we identified. Like there is no footpath available. If there is a footpath, it has been encroached on by street vendors, or there is parking happening where people could walk, but they can't. Then wherever there are footpaths, the footpaths are basically having obstructions like electric poles. So these were some of the problems that we had identified, and moving on, we started doing specific interventions. So whatever we were proposing in this project, it has to be shown on ground. So we selected this first intersection. It's called the Huda Park Junction. So we selected this intersection where we redesigned the intersection, and try to make it safer for children. So as you can see, the intersection is huge. I mean, the area of this intersection before our intervention was 1,500 square meters, and it has other problems also. The area is so big that the traffic islands were being used for parking. So auto rickshaws pick and drop was happening right at the center of the intersection because the area is so large. And so these were the problems that we identified, and this is the Huda Park Junction, which is just about 150 meters from one of the schools that we had selected. And then we redesigned it, reclaiming almost 90% of the area. The crossing distance, as you can see, usually earlier it was you had to cross 60 meters to cross the junction. Now you have to cross 15 meters. So these are the kind of interventions we had proposed, that this is how you can generally make roads safer for all the people, not just kids. This is how you can make the road safer for all the users. And as proof of concept, So as proof of concept, we installed some temporary infrastructure using cones and barricades. We demonstrated what changes we are proposing at this intersection. And I'd like to show this 30-second video of how we transformed this intersection overnight. So this is the situation of this intersection before we did our temporary installation. And as you can see, everyone is moving very randomly. They are not stopping. And there is a lot of parking happening at the traffic islands. You can see that tractor is also waiting there. And on the night of 8th or 7th February, we just put up some cones and barricades at this intersection to demonstrate what the changes are being proposed. So using just cones, barricades, and few liters of paints, we did this for the entire night with a lot of support from the police department. And by morning, we were ready with the new design. Now, this is a very conceptual design, but it helps in making people understand how through simple interventions you can actually make a big change. And now, after the intervention, you see people are actually stopping at the intersection before turning. The other thing which can be also seen is how the crossing distance has reduced. Earlier, they were going from one end to the another in one single go. But now, with extended traffic islands and extended medians, we have places where people can actually stop before crossing. So, through very simple measures, we changed this intersection. Now, this was just general road safety. And so far, this is what we have done in the project till date. Now, going forward, there is only one activity that is left in the project, and which is the permanent execution of the designs that have been proposed. So, these are some of the ideas that we have for child-specific design intervention. So, we want to separate children from the motorized vehicle plying on the road. So we create barriers. Then there's a problem of, so children have a vision angle. So the signages that we have, they must be too high for the children. So we were thinking of painting the signages on the road. And we are also exploring with the idea of having lower curb heights. Then some traffic management and zonal intervention, what we have thought of, like creating a 500-meter buffer, which will be a school zone where we will have a specific speed limit and assisted pedestrian crossing and different pick and drop times for younger and older children. So this was the project that we are doing in Rohtak and how we are actually making the commute safer for children. So just to highlight again on the challenges, data has been the biggest challenge. I mean, the other challenges are, I mean, one has no control over these challenges and we will always face these challenges, but something which we can rectify is the data problem. We don't have fatality data, we don't know how many children are getting injured, how many incidents that are where children are involved, the commute patterns, and the challenges children generally face during their commutes. So that was the project that we had, and we are open to any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thanks, Vaibhav. That was really great. I think that time-lapse video that you shared, the two side by side, was really quite striking. I wanted to just remind everyone that if you wanted to submit any questions, you should do that through the questions box. And we have about 10-15 minutes now, so the floor is open. Vaibhav, just to get started, while to give everyone a chance to write down their questions, one question that has come up already from the audience is about data, actually. The question is, did you have data on incidents that occurred due to breaking traffic rules and any seasonal data on traffic-related deaths? Is that something that you looked into as part of this research?
we do not have specific data on how many fatalities have happened due to breaking of law. I mean, we have total numbers on the fatalities happening over a year. So again, this data has been collected from the analysis done by the Road Safety Associates of the Haryana Vision Zero program, and they have a very specific module of analyzing the police FIRs to ascertain the reason. So as such, we do not know how many deaths have occurred due to breaking of traffic laws.
I think also on the other side, so one is that traffic crashes or accident as they're called, the data is not actually recorded. It's only when there's a fatal crash that the data gets recorded. So minor injuries or even just hitting of vehicles, that data is not recorded. So that's a big problem. The other issue is very striking in the Spiro slide was that so for legal age of driving is 18 or 16 if you have a low powered vehicle. But you can see in these schools that kids of 12, 13, 14 years, 15 years are actually driving two-wheelers. So that itself is illegal. And you can see that it is happening in front of your eyes. But there is no kind of quantitative data as such to kind of work on it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so actually on that point, another question was about, the sizable percentage of students driving, about do we know specifically what the ages they were and do they have learner's licenses?
So learner license, as Amit said, you are given a license to drive a vehicle after 16, but again, they don't have learner license.
So also when you are given to, when you can ride below 18, so there is a certain category of vehicle which is low powered, ungeared vehicles, which you can ride at after 16 years of age. But you can see the vehicles are actually 100cc plus, which these people are riding. So these are not low powered vehicles. These vehicles require a proper license, one that you will only get at the age of 18. Second, even if you have a learner license, that does not mean you can ride this vehicle on your own. As per learner license, you have to have a person who has a valid license sitting with you, and then you are kind of driving or riding in the process that you are learning. But these are kind of kids who are riding on their own, and sometimes with their friends also sitting behind.
Another question related to the data. Somebody asked, how did you validate the addresses of children's homes? Since you asked about how far they lived, was there a process to validate that?
So we had different methods. So this survey was not done in one go. We had different forms. So first we gave out the form to the children. They actually filled themselves. And then we did the show of hand survey. Then we also had the school's registry from where we could validate. So there were 3 or 4 different variations of the survey. We can't have an 100% honest survey. I mean, that's very difficult to ascertain whether a child is speaking the truth or not. But we tried to validate it using comparing the data we got from different methodologies that we used.
Another question is about how you worked with teachers. So how were teachers sensitized to kind of help educate children about road safety? And is there a plan to advocate to policymakers to have age and gender segregated data? So those are actually 2 separate questions, but maybe first address the question about teachers.
So speaking of the project, the behavioral change was not specifically part of this project. So we are not looking into road safety education for children or for even caretakers. So we just have sensitization workshops that we showed. They are just sensitization workshops that this is an issue which needs to be addressed rather than a behavioral change. So there were no sensitization or education of teachers rather the focus of this whole project has been improving the safety through infrastructure.
And then the second question was about whether there's a plan to advocate to policymakers to have age and gender segregated data. Somebody else also mentioned that they were surprised that the FIR doesn't have age included in their form. So is there any sort of work happening to change things at a policy level in terms of how that data is collected?
So again, this is beyond the scope of the project. So as far as the Rohtak project is concerned, this is not part of the scope. But yes, we are trying to get age included into the FIR form. So there are different projects WRI is doing. One is Haryana Vision Zero. And through that project, we are advocating that not just age, there are a lot many more parameters that are not included in the FIR at present. So we are advocating that these parameters should be included in the FIR, but not through this project.
Okay. Did you consider the land use characteristics along the road stretches that you analyzed to figure out the walkability of the area?
Yes, so we did consider not just land use, even the activities that are happening on the street. So one of the intersections that we just showed, there is a very big interstate bus terminal there. So there are a lot of vendors, street vending also happening over there. So we are incorporating them also. So it's not just about making child road safety. We are looking at this in a very comprehensive manner. It's just that we are focusing a lot on child road safety. So the general parameters will be addressed. We have to incorporate street vending into our designs. On-street parking is happening, and we will try to accommodate it as far as possible. So all these things will be taken care of, but with a focus towards child friendliness.
Sorry, yes. Sorry, the sound just cut out for me for a second, but I just got that. Thank you. Another question is actually about how you measured the impact on the intersection capacity before and after the interventions. What was your process for that?
So this has been very recently done. So we it's just visual observance till now. But we will be doing a crash conflict analysis using artificial intelligence. There is a model where, so we have pre-intervention videos and we have post-intervention videos. And then the city is also going for permanent execution of the designs that we have proposed. So before, during and after execution videos, we will put it into a AI model and do a crash conflict analysis that this was the number of conflicts that were happening earlier, or these are the number of near misses that were happening at this intersection, and after the intervention, this is the number. So a crash conflict analysis will be done.
And so the crash conflict analysis will give us the safety performance of the intersection. And the same data can also give us the capacity performance, we can count how many vehicles are passing through that period. So we can know the impact on capacity as well as safety through this model.
And I think you mentioned this already, but just to confirm, because another question was about how we are moving from trial to more permanent change. The government has committed to making the design changes permanent?
Yes, so the government is also a part of the project. So as I mentioned in the very beginning, the municipal corporation and the Rohtak police, they are the project partners, and they have also virtually committed to the donor that they will implement all the proposals that we are making. And we have already got approval for this the first intersection that we tried, and we have already submitted the drawing. So The process has already started. The government is committed to at least improve on these 13 kilometers of roads. We have their commitment.
And was that part of the, did that factor into why Rohtak was selected? Somebody asked whether the government was already showing inclination towards these issues, or is WRI working specifically with tier 2 and tier 3 cities?
So in fact, this was part of a kind of global, so this project was a part of a global competition where cities were asked to submit proposal, and we had kind of at that time worked with the district administration of Rohtak, who were very keen. And a lot of cities from India submitted this proposal, and only 2 cities got selected for this project. One was Rohtak and the other was Surat in Northeast part of the country. One of the prime drivers why these cities got selected was the commitment from the government agencies. So I think that is critical to success, and we are very happy with the kind of support extended by the district administration and police in Rohtak to get this project implemented.
So the last few questions. There's a question about whether you could, how you would differentiate the process that you went through from the 3-star rating method of the Indian Road Assessment Program, if you're familiar with that. The question is about whether, if someone wanted to implement this process in their city, is there kind of a flow chart available about the different steps to be taken?
So I think one of the ways in which this is different from the IRAP or the star rating is that the star rating looks at the infrastructure provisions and then kind of gives a score. Now that works well in the highways, but when you come inside the urban area, the complexity are so huge that this kind of approach methodology may not give you the right answer. And so what we have to do is to move beyond that and get into a road safety inspection. So that's one part. The second part is that the star rating program does not take into account the needs and aspirations of children. And so some of the requirements of children are totally different from that of the adult. And so that is also kind of captured in this. So as we move forward, what we also want to do is come up with a publication around the learnings from Rohtak, and that we would like to use to kind of help kind of scale up or bring the learning to a larger audience so that we can influence a much greater change.
So you mentioned in the study that there are students who are walking to school. There's a question about what is the walkability ratio, and are you proposing any types of foot over bridges or vehicle underpasses for children's safety?
So when Weber presented that the trip lengths of a majority are less than 2 kilometers, but only 25% people walk or cycle, so that itself shows that walkability is not that correct. And if you want to improve walkability, you have to do multiple things. So for example, how do you access the street? How do you walk along the street? And how do you cross the street? So crossing is just a part of the overall walkability. And so what we want to do is actually create a safe infrastructure where people can walk. In terms of foot over bridges, we have seen is that most of the places in Delhi which has wide roads, foot over bridges are not utilized. So we have to be slightly careful in terms of when and where we plan foot over bridges. Unless there is a massive highway and there's a huge amount of traffic, people will not use foot over bridges. But you can still create safe infrastructure by providing at-gate crossing, which is what we want to do in this project. But there could be certain locations where foot over bridge is warranted. Maybe railway line, maybe that is something that we will look into.
Okay. Okay, so I have one last question, but I also wanted to let everybody know that we will be making the recording of this webinar available on the CityFix Learn within a week, and we'll send an email out to all participants so that you can access that, and also a version of the presentation will also be up there to download. But the last question, just to close out, is actually about The question is, during road widening projects, existing footpaths and other interventions for safe commuting are often demolished. Is that being taken into consideration here in terms of making sure that existing footpaths are not hampered as part of the implementation?
So most of these roads are within the city, and so road widening, I don't think they have the space for widening the road within the city. All these the 13 kilometers that we have seen in the city, there is no scope for widening. But yes, if the question is regarding widening of the carriageway, so we have actually done all the traffic volume counts, and we have projected the need for the near future, and we do believe that there would be no need for widening the carriageways. So right now, the carriageway is being underutilized. That is why we are reclaiming the carriageway and making it a footpath. Or for whatever reason, the vehicular movement will not be at those places. So as of now and in the near future, we do not see that there is any need for widening. But some years later, I mean, I don't know. It's up to the government to decide later on. But right now, the all the stretches, they are being underutilized. So there is no scope for widening. There is no need for widening actually.
Thanks. There are maybe two or three, a couple of questions that we didn't get a chance to answer. So I just want to let the people who asked those questions know that we have noted them down and we'll get back to you over email. Thank you everybody for attending and being here and for being so engaged with your questions. Thank you so much, Vaibhav and Amit, for this great presentation and for addressing all of these questions. And we hope you will all follow up with us and join the next webinars in this series. So stay tuned for updates about that. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.